All right, so I want to talk to the Republicans and conservatives, um, as well as those who uh, who call themselves Democrats, but have a tendency to lean towards the illusion of the center, uh, or call themselves liberals and left, but have a tendency to vote against their better interests. A prime example would be the tax cuts that gave away trillions to the ultra wealthy and corporations. So I've been watching the media, both the corporate propaganda and even the independent media news. And there's a common theme is that they're saying Trump, Trump, Trump. You voted for Trump, you got him in, and so on and so forth. But they always seem to leave out something. Is that it is the corporate Democrats and all of the Republicans who are in the state and federal who voted with Trump and who actually was the ones who pushed, especially the Republicans, who pushed. So I make a point. It is whether you have a Democratic president or a Republican president, he cannot do tax cuts or basically embezzlement of money to give to the wealthy. They cannot do it alone. One person cannot do it alone. So, but if you have your Congress doing it with you, then yes, you can get it done. You can break all sorts of laws. You can go against convention. You can go against the Common Good Convention. You can go against laws on the books. You can go against rules and regulations if you write policies, if you vote to put in policies and legislation, which allows you to do it, then it becomes a reality. Even though there are rules and regulations and laws and statutes that state you cannot, never mind what's in the Constitution and what's in the Bill of Rights. So, unlike all of them, I'm not going to say it's Trump. What I'm going to say to is it is Congress along with Trump that allowed this to happen. Now, the independent media is putting out posting tweets done by Republicans and conservatives, the ones that voted who voted for Trump, who are the MAGA crowd. And then even I'm sure there's indication that others that didn't vote for Trump, but voted for for Republicans and corporate Democrats who are bitching and moaning. So I keep on saying, stop voting for these people. Step up yourselves. Get into it. Talk about the way progress left, the true progressive left, sees it, because it's reality. When you suppress the vote in favor of people that you have voted in, when they use gerrymandering, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, when they use all sorts of different tactics like super delegates, with the Democrats and all sorts of other stuff, then what you have is you have a system that works only for the politicians and for the ultra wealthy and the corporations. And when you listen to a media who is an echo chamber for the elite and the establishment, then of course you're going to get false information. You're going to get a false impression. You're going to get misconceptions. You're going to get spin, and you're going to get division. And they use race. Race is always a dividing issue. Race is an issue that keeps you from paying attention to those whom you've elected and placed in to basically screw you, to commit crimes against you. They're not for you, they're against you. So going back to those tweets, people are talking about for the first time they're paying thousands of dollars and they're middle class or they're upper middle class and they're paying thousands of dollars in taxes, which is something that they didn't have to deal with before. They're finding out all sorts of the things that you could exempt from taxes so that you can get back more is gone. You can't use those exemptions. So they're bitching about that, and the thing is you place them in, you place these criminals in there. You place these criminals to do legislation and policies against you. So of course they're gonna fuck you over. They always do. This is why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ro Khanna, he's not a freshman. He's been in there, but Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren, she's really iffy with me. But but Elizabeth Warren, at least she gives small amounts of indication that she's actually doing right. But she's also done quite a few things that are wrong. That's because she doesn't have a spine, and she doesn't have the principles. Even with Bernie Sanders, he recently did a thing about Venezuela and calling Maduro a dictator and everything else, and basically doing the echo chamber rather than actually looking into it, like which he generally does. He generally has a tendency to look objectively at things, but he got a complete and utter F with the Venezuela issue. But those are rare mistakes that he makes. Elizabeth Warren makes far more mistakes, and they're not done out of true ignorance. And I think Bernie Sanders did the Venezuela thing out of ignorance, or because he didn't have the time, because he's running around trying to get people to understand, because he's posting on his channel to tell you about what's happening, such as his recent one where he talks about a drug for a rare muscular disease that used to cost $0, but now costs $375,000 a year. Now, if you're making 30, 40, 50,000, or even $100,000, or even $200,000, how the hell do you pay $375,000? You don't. So even if you make $500,000, are you willing to give away $375,000? So these are the sorts of things that happen when you don't get involved, when you don't call out. Look what happened in the midterms with the Republicans, especially with the Republicans. But the Democrats also did it. But the media didn't cover it. Democrats picked the corporate candidates. The Democrats funded the incumbents, and they used suppression and trashing of votes to keep their candidates, the ones that they liked, in. And the ones that they couldn't do any of that with, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because the margin was the margin of victory was so high that there was no feasible way without actually coming out and admitting that they placed the person they wanted in. So these are the sorts of things. When you can't suppress the vote enough, when you can't have any feasible way to show the massive margin of victory, and you can't do that, otherwise you'll actually be stating, "Oh yeah, we're just a bunch of criminals, and we're just placing whoever we want," and then we are basically putting in, we are self-appointing rulers. So the Democrats did it, and there's a couple of very good investigative journalists who cover voter suppression and rigging and electoral fraud. I have them on my list. Can't think of them. Can't think of the names right now. But one of them was on Democracy Now! Talking about it, and he mentions the other guy that covers it. So these are the sort of things. So when I constantly harp on that the people with legitimacy are the ones committing the vast majority of capital crimes, and why I call them traitors, and why they call them capital criminals, and so on and so forth, it's exactly because of this. So I want you to understand. Pay attention. Find the right sources to get your information. Doesn't mean that you have to believe. I don't even believe. I don't believe everything that the independent media puts out. The channels I watch, like the Real News Network, which I only use YouTube. Democracy Now!, TYT, The Rational National, The Humanist Report. Let me see. RT, Al Jazeera, Telesur, Jimmy Dore, The Intercept, the Gray Zone, with the Gray Zone Project, with Max Blumenthal. I cover a wide spectrum, including Press TV, and it's a mainstream news channel from that's Turkish news channel done in English, and it's accepted in the United States. I just can't think of them. I watch them. I also watch DW, Deutsche Welles, which is a German channel. Of course, I've unsubscribed. I still pay attention occasionally to stuff that pops up on them from them. That's not on my subscriptions, but I get a wide spectrum. Navarro Media from the UK. I also watch Bernie's channel. I also watch Jeremy Corbyn. And the reason why I watch them is not because they call themselves progressive. It's not because of this whole left thing. I watch them because it's I get actual information, because they cover things with a more blunt and with a more objective frame. They don't color it. They don't color it as much. They don't spin it as much. They don't misrepresent it as much. And I take everything with a grain of salt. I boil it down. And I do, and I also verify it myself by looking at multiple other sources. So I'm not just saying, "Oh, this is factual." I do pay attention to the mainstream when they post it on YouTube, and I can see what they're saying and what they're not mentioning, and I can look at the indie channels I watch, and see that, and then I can also go do a Google search. I can look at what the New York Times has printed. I can or the Washington Post or the Atlantic. You know, that's another channel I keep an eye on. The Atlantic. So this is why it is so important. And politics is life, because it affects us in the real world. So that's why we have to pay attention. Otherwise, if we keep ourselves informed, we will be aware of it. That's why it's important to keep track of what your politicians in your state are doing, what the politicians in the federal are doing, and what your international and domestic corporations and companies are doing. It's important because it has effects. I'll tell you, one of the greatest sources of what the corporations are doing is the Ring of Fire. They with Mike Papantonio, with the America's Lawyer on RT. He's a class action lawyer who has his own show, and he covers the class actions of corporate crime. The Ring of Fire covers a lot of class action. These are stuff that impact us all. About corporate crimes, about the poisoning. They're the ones talking about Monsanto. They're the ones talking about DuPont, 3M, Dow. They're also the ones that are talking about animal agro farming and the regular agro farming, the corporate agro farming altogether. They're talking about all that, and they're talking to you about stuff that they are going to courts for. And these are class action suits, which means there are thousands to millions of people being affected. This also covers the political side and how the politicians and the regulatory agencies, that's quote unquote regulatory agencies, are working hand in hand. And that's fascism. We live in a fascist state. Fascism is always against the majority. Always. So, understand, if we keep putting the people in disingenuous, evil, maniacal people, or criminally negligent, stupidly negligent, and uncaring and completely apathetic people who have only their own self-interest, then we are going to continue to have this. And when they continue to feed a narrative of division by using religion, race, economics, the economics that is geared towards the wealthy, when they things like the war on drugs or war on terrorism, all these things, or Venezuela, all these things is to distract from painting. It's like that. It's like that thing from The Wizard of Oz. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. That's exactly what they're doing, and the media is working hand in hand. Why? Because the media is filled with people making millions. Prime example. What's his name? The whitehead guy from the whitehead guy that's the gay whitehead guy that's Anderson Cooper. He's a Vanderbilt. Anderson Cooper is a Vanderbilt, and the Vanderbilts are old money. The Vanderbilts, along with much of their old money, do not put themselves out into the social consciousness because they do things behind the scenes. They're the ones being the shareholders. The old money is there. They're the ones doing the shareholding. They're the ones supplying venture capital without their names. They're the ones doing all that quote-unquote philanthropy, and they're the ones that made philanthropy a thing where it's we're gonna do philanthropy. We're gonna make it make ourselves look good, which others like Warren Buffett and all those others, and Soros, and every other one have done, including what the Starbucks guy Schultz and the guy from Dell, Michael Dell. They're talking. It's a tactic. It's look away. Don't see what the man behind the curtain is doing, and it's a way to get good press. When in fact they're not really doing the giving out the massive sums of money that the media says they are, and what they're doing is this. They're often doing, and if they do spend, it's often to make sure that they get more money to distract us. So the whole thing, that's part of fascism, is to make themselves look good and make themselves look better. The reason why you have shows like the Jersey Shore and all these other and Big Brother and the Apprentice is the Apprentice, and the other one where you got a bunch of venture capitalists and people come in to pitch ideas to get funding from venture capitalists. And America Bosses or Corporate Bosses, the show where you have these corporate bosses and they're made to look good. It's all propaganda. It's all to make them look good. Just as the FBI and the police, as well as the intelligence community, puts out shows like NCIS, Law and Order, uh, Quantico, uh, uh, CSI, uh, you name it. It's all to make them say, okay, look, uh, to propagandize, make themselves look good, while behind the scenes you got FBI naming Black Lives Matter, uh, uh, what the hell was it? But basically, it's under a terrorist umbrella. Greenpeace, Oxfam is on the same freaking list. So why they have BDS, the BDS crew, a crop under this, while they're trying to make legislation to make BDS illegal with huge fines and jail. This is the sort of stuff that the media does. And whether it's entertainment media or the quote unquote news media. Why do you think in every single superhero show, the top bad guys never seem to really get any real real punishment? That's another form of propaganda. You know, you have the quote unquote superheroes. You know, lately it's the superheroes like Superman is destroying entire cities, fighting the bad guy. That's another form of propaganda. It's all look the other way, or target the brown people, target the black people, target the look at the brown people, look at the black people, look at the Asians, look at the Muslims, look at the Jews, look at the evangelicals, look at it's all a distraction. It's all so that they can be the malicious, malevolent, criminal goons doing behind the scenes to fuck you over, to fuck us all over collectively. Yes, it is a conspiracy. It is a conscious conspiracy. And there is no way that it can be done without knowing this. You don't unknowingly do crime. Because we all know what crimes are. You don't go. I can't unknowingly go up to somebody with a knife or a gun and rob them. That just isn't possible. That is what has taken place. You know, currently there's like the latest poll is 76% of the country, from Republicans to conservatives to Democrats to independents to Green, and so they all want Medicare for all, universal health care. But you have Nancy Pelosi basically going to talking to Blue Cross and Blue Shield to give and pitching their solution to saving Blue Cross and Blue Shield, the insurance companies, and other. So this is what I'm talking about, and you have. And they've packed Homeland Security, they've packed the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and all these other, with people, with the bootlickers and co-conspirators of the fascist regime. And that is what it is. Anderson Cooper is part of the fascist regime. Chris something from... not Chris Hedges, but Chris, from Chris Sutton from MSNBC. He's part of the fascist regime. Your local news channel, part of the fascist regime, because they're gonna talk about, they're gonna do the division. They're gonna call out the piddling little stories, while ignoring the ones that are gonna impact you because of state or federal legislation, which actually goes against the actual things on the books already in your state, that apply equally because it's common law. Never mind the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Understand? That's why I take the tone I do. That's why I get angry. That's why I am outraged. And it's not just for myself. It's for everybody, because I understand that if I get impacted by this, it means others will get impacted by this. If something that is done on the premise that it's due to the skin color, it can come back to bite me. So yes, I do empathize, and yes, I do stand up. Because in the end, they are Americans. In the end, they are humans. Because top criminals like this do not have principles of principles, solid principles. Because if convenience dictates that you go after the MAGA crowd, and you're a criminal on the top with legality, they're going to go after the MAGA crowd. If the criminals on top who are pandering to the left, and they have and there are issues that means that you have to go after the left, they're going to go after the left because they're only in for themselves. That's what fascism is. If it means oppressing the large portion, regardless of ethnicity, race, or religion, then that's what you do. That's fascism. It's to keep power and wealth and influence. All right, I completely digressed. Anyways, I'm going to end it there.